That sounds perfect.
It's such a silky machine.
Yeah, that thing is crazy. I know like a billion people who would pay a lot of money just for that. It's like the church music pad that everyone tries to get to but can't.
Hey everyone, my name is Dan Shimolinski. People like to call me Chimy, and you can too. I am a bassist, sound designer, and composer living in Los Angeles, and we are back, not in my studio this time, but Soundpaint's beautiful record room to introduce you to a synthesizer that I have been working on, putting in some serious hours over the past couple months, and it's quickly become one of my favorite synthesizers of all time. And it's in this room right now. This is the J8X, and I cannot wait to dive into it, so let's get started. Now, I had the great fortune of designing these parts for you all, living with this beautiful synthesizer for several months. And in terms of all the synthesizers that I've played, yes, all of them over my life, ones I've owned, ones I've played in studios, this one surprised me the most. I think if you ask most people when they think of Roland synthesizers, the Juno obviously comes to mind, the Jupiter 8, the Jupiter 6, 4, but the J8X really doesn't get mentioned. It is certainly not the most attractive looking synthesizer. The way I would describe it would be if you saw a Juno 102 106 once and then tried to recreate it from memory, it's like, oh, it was gray, right? And then there's some red buttons and some blue ones and some yellow buttons. Just throw it on there. So definitely not the prettiest, most majestic looking thing. It's a lot of plastic. The membrane is touchy to say the least. They ripped out the sliders and replaced it for either a touch to function and single slider interface to change programs, or you had to upgrade and get the PG800 programmer. The preset memory had a relatively small capacity, and if you wanted more, you had to keep track of cartridges that would literally go right in the upper left-hand corner there. The aftertouch strip always broke. It's broken on this one. And it's very important to note that it just came out at the wrong time. People were very infatuated with the DX7 and FM synthesis and kind of moving away from analog synthesis. So many things working against the case for the J8X, but the one thing that works in its favor is its sound. The same DCO into a voltage-controlled filter approach that they took on the Juno 106 and 60. But there's just more width, there's just more dynamics. I mean, even the bass register of this thing just sounds so monstrous. Relatively superficial reasons, it just gets shafted as Roland's forgotten child. But enough talking, we're here to listen to some sounds. Now you get 51 parts with the J8X library, and I can tell you that I really tried to cover the entire spectrum of this synth's sweet spot. I'm gonna start with my favorite program from this entire library, and it's called South Beach Strum. I tried to get kind of a beachy 80s guitar sound from this, and this to me just really captures so many of the feature sets of the J8X. Lots of envelope action, cross mod, and a high resonance point on the filter, which I think just really brings out the beauty and sweetness of the J8X. It's beautiful. That one always gets me. If you put it like through a plate reverb, I mean, that really just sweetens the whole deal. It just evokes an era, a nostalgia, such a specific snapshot in time. This part, Airy Rings, is kind of combining a little bit of cross mod and just a very, very high resonance point on the filter, and I think some high pass filter as well. You'll also find that if there's a brass 1 and a brass 2, or a string 1 and a string 2, it often means that there's chorus on one and not on the other. So this brass 1 is very dry and just really has modulation in the pitch. It's got that envelope action, so you're actually hearing an assignment of the envelope decaying very quickly to the center of the pitch to give that kind of characteristic synth brass blip. But there's no chorus on it. It's a very dry, brute sound. If we go to brass 2, you're going to hear some chorus. But you still get the filter action. So, super dynamic, usable parts.
Got a little bit of the Lyle Mazie vibe to it too. Yes.
For my nerds out there, I have to point out this part, emerging fifth, because it uses something that is super unique, and I actually didn't even notice when I started looking at the PG-800. But as I dove deeper, I noticed that there's an envelope control only on the mixer volume of oscillator 2, which means you can actually control the volume of one single oscillator in the mixer section to slowly come in later than the other one. So I've called this emerging fifth because a fifth above the other oscillator slowly emerges its way in. Did you catch it? It's subtle. It comes in just a little bit later than the first oscillator. And if for whatever reason you don't like that, you can of course grab the offset tool and just have some awesome squares a fifth apart. This one's to all the haters that say this is a cold synthesizer. Here's kind of the epitome of assigning envelopes to pitch in terms of these parts, and it's a little bit over-exaggerated, but I really do like it. And you get a nice release trigger there. A lot of these have unique release triggers. You know, with such a unique filter, you want to capture what that feels like when you're actually pulling your hand off the key. So very, very unique. And of course, if you don't want that for whatever reason, you can just turn that off right there. And again, if you don't want that pitch envelope action, if that's just a little too much for you, you can just go ahead and whoop. And even if you want to match the attack, you can have just basically a little bit. I really tried to give you a wide variety of sounds that with simple tweaks in the rack section can become something completely different and equally as cool. I gave you the naked bare waveforms, gave you noise, pulse, square, and saw waves going through both chorus profiles if you would like, as well as a clean version. So I feel like this is a good opportunity to really kind of hone in on what the chorus sounds like, because it's very, very unique and very different from the Junos. It's a little more modulaty, it's a little more hi-fi, maybe more voices, kind of a wider sounding chorus than the Juno to me, but I think it rocks. So let's just pull up the saw wave, and this is just totally naked. Oh my God, like even I know it's just a naked saw wave, but man, it's just so thick and so fat. Even at the core with nothing on it, this synth just sounds incredible. So let's start with just the saw with no chorus on it. I'm gonna play a little chord here. Okay, here's chorus 1. And chorus 2. The difference between 1 and 2 is relatively subtle. Maybe we can hear it more in the squares. It's subtle, but the more notes you add to a chord, the more stuff you have going, you can definitely hear a difference. And for my favorite factory preset, probably because it's been on a million recordings and I just didn't even know it, is the E piano or piano 1 preset. This does have dynamic control via the velocities, and it's just such a classic synth kind of E piano sound, and it's just super warm. virtuosity is just so effective on the piano. It's like you can hear the tine, the kind of tine sound that they were going for. It's really, really cool. Let's get to the king of warmth. This is a factory preset, and I love it. I love it. I love it. It's called Soundtrack, and oh yeah, I loved it so much. It's actually loaded on the screen. I don't know if you can see that, but it says Soundtrack. This one is just stunning and is the ultimate kind of underscore synth sound that you want to go for. So here comes a very, very pretty C major triad. Gotta show you some string sounds, right? Here's string 1. And here's string 2. So, no chorus on 1, chorus on 2. Then I just tried to create the fattest saw, thick sound I could possibly create, and I called it sustenance because this is your meat and potatoes. This is your thickness. This is just, what can you do for me? How can you support me? J8X, here's the answer. So nice and thick and beefy, but you just get a little bit of LFO warble to give it some character. But if you want more warble, I would kindly direct you towards the Living VCO because I really tried to give this as much life and care as possible through all of my lanes of modulation on the J8X. Nice and thick, lots of motion. What more can you ask for? Now there are a lot of programs here, and I do mean a lot. You're getting my touches, Nicholas Semrad's touches, Troll's touches on all of this stuff, and as you can see from my scrolling here, you get a lot. I'm always open to seeing what other sound designers do to tweak my programs. I think it's the coolest thing. You know, all this stuff is super, super interpretational. You can take this stuff any direction you want to go, and it's going to sound good just based on being such a badass synthesizer. But this is one that I did called Analog Underscore, and, you know, it's a 3-part program, just kind of gave it a really warmy kind of, you know, modulaty sound, something that, you know, would just sit nicely under a score. And then Nick comes along. It's beautiful. It's almost like a quicker attack, kind of thicker sound that later evolves into the sound that I came up with. So this is kind of a fun one. It's a little bit random. So what I did here in the matrix, as you'll see, is I have LFO1 controlling the cutoff of the low pass frequency, and then I have LFO2, which is a random shape controlling the frequency of LFO1. So if you hold a note, you'll really be able to see this here. I love having LFOs modulating things in other LFOs. It's just such a fun little trick. Keeps things interesting for sure. Here's a pretty one called Dreamish, and we're really, really getting that filter motion that I love so much. And I think these are 2 parts that I did not demo. So, right? I didn't show Lucid Dreams or Mellow Squares. So, perfect. Let's do it. Beautiful. So just kind of a nice hollow, almost square wave sounding thing. And just so you can hear what it sounds like with all this treatment off, it's not that much different. And I would hope, as a good program designer, that I gave you cutoff control on the analog filter. So. I mean, if that ain't the era, I don't know what is. This synth also totally works for the ARP kind of stuff. Did a little kind of, it's just a very simple velocity pattern here, and some LFO action happening on the micro pitch of part 1, and I used a healthy amount of both offset and envelope stuff here to get really, really kind of punchy articulations. Awesome. I don't really know how I ended up here making an oboe sound, but I did. I was just playing around with the pulse wave, and I was like, this kind of sounds like an oboe to me. So let's see, what is that? Yeah, 8-pole I think is the one that kind of weirdly sounded the most like the J8X filter to me. But isn't that cool? We created that solely using Soundpaint's processing. I mean, it's literally just a pulse wave with some envelope. And if we turn that off, I mean, it's literally LFO, you know, stuff like that. But I gave you MIDI control, MIDI CC control over both the volume and the frequency and the cutoff, so you're really, really getting kind of an organic crescendo as you raise that mod wheel up. This one's called Galactic Weapon, and as you will see, I have 3 instances of noise, all kind of pitched and different things are happening. We've got a crazy LFO going to the pitch of that one, plus a pulse chorus 2 oscillator there. And yeah, there's, I'll just open this up and you can just take a look for yourself. Not the most practical patch, but certainly a lot of fun. I can see that as being like an intro to just an epic drop. Anyway, too much fun.
So that's the FME part of it.
Yeah.
The little bit crush. So, you know, bit brush is, yes, it's the down sampler, the video game thing, but gosh, you can really, really use it for some pretty stuff, especially if it's pre-analog filter, because then you get the warmth. It just adds a little bit of noise and sizzle. For me, at least, it's very evocative of a lo-fi rainy day. Here's another one where I did use the music box. I did use it, and it's just barely in there. I think it comes up a little more with the mod wheel, so yeah. Here is Noise Key. So, useful for a little upper harmonic magic if you want it. This one's called Nostalgiator. Lovely. And you know me with my little one-key compositions. Had to do it. Really, really fun here. Got 4 parts tuned to a bunch of different stuff, all warm warble. So the obvious name for this patch was one-key warmth. we are utilizing mono glide here, which is really, really cool. And yeah, very, very pretty. Here's a bass sound designed for the arpeggiating section here. Patches like that, when you're really doing the kind of like single note arpeggiating thing, that's when you can really, really hear the round robins and the differences from note to note. Yes, it's got DCOs, but man, there's something slightly different about each little one, and just the way that it hits is just so, so beautiful here. And we're just using basically square wave and a saw wave, so it's like, you know, going through a filter. I mean, this is about as simple as it gets, and it still sounds incredible. This one's called Vibe Keys. Finally, let's finish with Wide and Warm, where we are utilizing some shimmer, reverb, and sounds great. Oh yeah, I love this little trick here too. Assigning an LFO to the rotation of the stereo image just to kind of, you know, juice some stuff. And we've got LFO going to the pan. Oh yeah, that's right. I remember all this stuff now. Okay, cool. So lots of inner motion with this program here, and I think it really works. The J8X, just beautiful, just warm, everything you want, so much motion, so many modulation possibilities. I mean, are you gathering how special of a synth this thing is? I mean, it's incredible. You know, what I think the J8X provides is maybe just a little more sizzle factor, a little more hi-fi than, say, like the Juno 6.0. You know, it's just an interesting synth that I feel like gets far too overlooked based on some really superficial things. And in some respects, it really does that kind of soft string, soft pad thing better than, honestly, the Jupiter, in my opinion. I know, controversial statement, but you know, I love the core oscillators. I love how this thing sounds completely wide open. And you know, the more that you do, the more little modulations you put in, the more motions, the more you take advantage of the unique routing on the PG800, you know, the more you're rewarded. So it's a really, really special synth. I had custody of this synth for about 3 months, and you know, we really tried to just cover the gamut in terms of what this thing can do. And you know, every day I would turn it on and just find something new, find a little tiny quirk or something where it's like, ooh, if you just kind of let the resonance sit in this one sweet spot, it really just changes the whole dynamic of the filter and the synth. And anyway, I'm rambling. This is a really special board, and I'm so thrilled that we were able to capture it in such a detail and bring it to you, the sound painter, at home. It's the sauce. It's absolutely the sauce, and I really hope you pick this one up, because it's special to me, and it will soon be special to you. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. This is Chimy, signing out. Take care.